Welcome, everybody. I am back. This is Devin. I have missed a couple days. I'm going to explain why in a couple minutes. But today we are going to focus on bringing more music to your writing. And I've left you a little clue just then. Anyway, this is Devin Galaudet. I'm the editor-in-chief of The No Traveler, MFA in creative nonfiction, as well as the author of the upcoming book, 10,000 Miles with My Dead Father's Ashes. Every day, that's the goal, we talk about writing. We talk about things that we do. We talk about how to improve. We talk about books. We talk about literary terms. We talk about all kinds of things in order to become better writers and better at moving our complex lives and stories onto the page. And so we talk about it every day. And to be quite honest with you, when I'm doing this, I am more active in my own writing pursuits, which is a good thing. So anyway, before we get into today's topic, I just want to briefly say why I wasn't here yesterday. It was kind of like a physical thing, and I'm sharing this almost as like it was a public service announcement. I was sitting in a coffee shop with my editor, and we were going through some notes, and what would happen is I'd look down and then I'd look up, and then I'd look down, sort of like at the notes that I had, and then I'd look up to talk to him. And every time I did that, a white light went like this across my right eye. And for a while I was just thinking, well, maybe it's some weird glare, and it kept happening. As a matter of fact, when I was in a darker room, it was even more prevalent. It was kind of like, and then it kind of transmutated into like a light flash over on the side of my eye. So it first freaked me out, but I called up a friend of mine who's an optometrist, and she suggested that I was having, there's a whole number of components in your eye, but I ultimately went to an eye doctor yesterday. They put in some drops, made my pupils look like golf balls. And so at the end of the story is that in the back of your eye, there's a couple things that can actually detach. One of them is kind of like a bag of fluid. And when that bag starts pulling away, it can actually start messing with the thing in your eye that you don't want pulling away. Actually, you don't want any of it pulling away. But it's I guess it's the retina. I'm probably not saying any of this correctly, but the important thing to know is that if you see these flashing lights, the way I did, is that you should probably stop whatever you're doing and make sure you see an eye doctor as soon as possible. If you see like a veil come down, or you see a lot of black spots before your eyes, you need to get to an emergency room immediately. This is the part of the conversation that I had yesterday with an eye doctor, and I think it's a really important stuff, and I'm really grateful to have both of my eyes working. But I need glasses, so you may see me wearing glasses in the very near future. And it's also, it's just important that we want to take care of ourselves. So I understand, and I totally get this has nothing to do with writing. It has a lot to do with reading, and honestly, just seeing the world. This is our lens, and so we try to take care of them as best as possible. So I had every kind of test that that was in the doctor's office. I wanted to make sure I covered all my bases. And yes, there's like on both eyes, there's this kind of a gelatinous thing that kind of comes apart. I'm a very middle-aged person, so those kinds of things happen. But let's dive into the thing that we're going to be talking about today. And this is how to make more music in your writing. And if you notice, I used M 3 times in a row. Make more music. And I'm going to actually read you a couple of examples of what I'm going to talk about. And I think the first example here, I'm actually looking at a literary terms and a literary theory book. And by the way, always say hello. Just in case you don't know, you can always leave a question or a comment down here. I will always respond to them because I'm always looking to find out who's watching and what kind of questions they have, what they may have taken away. So always say hello. So the phrase that is first given as an example is 5 miles meandering with amazing motion. Another example is a wildcat fur fire in a bracken bush twitches at a club tail, rounds his amber eyes. A rockabye rabbit humped on the world. The air crackles about him. The world is a rabbit's size. So anyway, in both of those examples, you were going to see sort of like doubles and triple examples of matching consonants in a row. And that is called alliteration. And it's kind of a fun little tool that just kind of like rings well when you're reading it, especially when you hear it, like if you're doing a literary reading or something like that. And it's where you put, again, multiple consonants in a row. I'm going to give you the actual definition that I have here. Alliteration, a figure of speech which consonants, especially at the beginning of words or stressed syllables, are repeated. It is a very old device, indeed, in English verse, older than rhyme, believe it or not, and is common in verse generally. It is used occasionally in prose. So anyway, it goes on to explain that this goes back to the 15th century. And explains several other things. But the important thing to understand is that we have a very strong hearing capacity, whether we're reading in our heads or where we're actually hearing something aloud. There is something kind of magical when you kind of take these words, not necessarily similar in meaning, but similar in sound. It's sort of like Peter piped a peck of pepper, pickles, something. I can't say it, but you get the idea. In other words, all of those P sounds in rapid fire have a certain musicality to them. And we use those as a writer to kind of get your reader's ears to perk up just a little bit. In other words, we don't want to make it a distraction. It's something like during the course of my own writing, I might use it in an article maybe once. It's just like one of those things. It's not something that you're going to put in the forefront. You're not going to look to make 25 M sounds in every sentence. I mean, you can, and people have toyed with things like that, but that's not really the goal here. The goal is to offer the reader something new and interesting throughout. If I put it in 25 times, in the course of a page or a paragraph, ultimately the thrill of that little unusual wordplay thing is going to go away quickly, and it's actually going to become annoying unless you are doing something so fabulous. I mean, it's possible. Listen, there's a lot of really brilliant writers out there. Like, as an example, I talk a lot when people send me articles, I make sure that they do not write in the you tense, in the second person, meaning like you did this, you did that other thing, and you enjoyed this part of it. I tend to have people not write like that for me. But there is a woman named Lori Moore who has written a lot of short stories all in second person. While most people can't pull it off, I believe that she does. So is there a person doing all kinds of crazy things with alliteration that's just like rocking the house? Yeah, there probably is. I'm not familiar with who it is, but I use it as like a little tiny device that I will pepper throughout a manuscript. Like in my larger manuscript, 10,000 Miles, I will have probably used it a couple dozen times, a half a dozen times. It's like just little things, and it's probably just 2 words in a row or 3 words in a row that all have the same M sound or H sound or L sound or V sound. And these are just kinds of little moments. The only problem with using them is that they sort of they draw attention more to the wordplay, the interaction between the 2 words, than they do perhaps the story that you're telling. So it's kind of a fun thing to throw into a line that may not be like a critical term. Oh, Joseph, hey man, hope you're well. Thank you for joining us. So if that happens, if you're using it, I wouldn't put alliteration next to I wouldn't put it before you are now going to reveal that the character's mother just died. Like, I wouldn't do that, because devices tend to be sort of like cool little things that draw attention to themselves. And that's not necessarily your goal. Your goal is to tell and craft a story that's going to be fun and interesting. But let's say if you are just, you're describing the room and there's nothing major going to happen in that paragraph other than your description of the room. You could say the wildwood beams. You have a little tongue twister down there. You could say that, and that will draw the attention to the beams, and there will be a certain sense of music that the reader will experience when that's put in there by the writer. But again, somebody might go, hey, Wildwood, that's kind of cool, but you don't want it to be put in a place that is going to actually detract from your writing as a whole. In other words, you don't want to I'm going to tell you who the murderer is, and now I'm going to do it in a way that is going to be wackadoodle and distracting from you actually finding out who the murderer is. So regardless of the style that you're doing, you want to make sure that you are getting a sense of offering the musicality, but not distracting from sort of like the larger piece of your story or the larger goal of your story. So anyway, always ask questions. I always love the thumbs up. It's really, I'm grateful for that. Press the wow button if you're wowed. I'm going to be here again tomorrow. We're going to be talking about some more stuff. I haven't decided whether we're going to get into a travel writing series, but writing is writing. And so regardless of whether we're talking about travel or we're talking about memoir, or we're talking about nonfiction, all of these things are going to be tools that you can use in your writing no matter what you're doing. So we're going to be here again tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure that you put your, put your name down here, ask a question. I will get to them all. And we're going to be here again tomorrow. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks for the thumbs up. I really am grateful for that. And I'll look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow. And if you have a question, put it down here and I will attempt to make a podcast out of it. Anyway, thanks so much and happy writing, everybody.